too much sometimes.
Sometimes.
Ученица Прабхупады, которая связана с делом. Да, очень незнакомая. А я ее не знаю. Я знаю, что они.
That should be Sunday. No, Hare Krishna. Okay, we're starting. Hare Krishna, good morning dear devotees. My name is Madhavananda Das. It's for our adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. Today is our 77th session in the series we're calling Meeting in Kurukshetra. And we're going to continue with our discussion of the talks between Uddhava and the gopis from the 47th chapter of the 10th canto. And we'll be hearing something more about different types of speakers and listeners today. Gora Graganya Gana Gocha Goloruharam Goranga Gudatama Gopyara Kopa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yatisingha Gora Govinda Deshikavaram Satatam Namami Uttama Adama Kichuna Bachila Japchiha Dile Kakola Kahe Premananda Hemona Goranga Hridaya Dadiya Bola Bhaja Goranga Kaha Goranga Laha Gorangera Namare Jai Jana Goranga Bhaje Sehoyamada Pranare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Yashaiva Padambuja Bhakti Labhya, Prema Vidana Padama Pumarta. Tasmai Jagan Mangala Mangalaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Madgavirapi Gopala Sri Kriyat Kripaya Jadi Tadaiva Sambhaya Pitva Vishayustat Priya Janaha Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Sasanatana Rupaka Gopala Raghunatha Brajavallabhapama Vancha Kalpatarubhishcha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Just 1 second. It's very appropriate just when we start offering our Vaishnava pranams that Sahadev Prabhu walks in. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, good morning from Sridham Mayapur. So today we're reading from the amazing 47th chapter, the 10th canto, the BHRAMARA-GITA, Uddhava's discussion with the gopis. And we're on text number 27, which we've been speaking about for the last, at least previous session, maybe the last 2 sessions. Sarvatma bhavo dikrito bhavatinam adhoksaje virahena mahabhaga mahame nugraha kritaha. Uddhava tells the gopis, you have rightly claimed the privilege of unalloyed love for the transcendental Lord. O most glorious gopis, indeed, by exhibiting your love for Krishna and separation from him, you have shown me great mercy. So, very wonderful verse in purport. Uddhava is saying here that because the gopis are sarvatma bhav, in other words, they're giving their mood, their bhav is sarvatma. They're giving everything to Krishna. Sarvatma bhava adikrito. That's their adhikar, that's their qualification. Bhavitanam adhoksaje. That they're worshipping Krishna in this way. And he's addressing Krishna as adhoksaja. Adhoksaja means someone who's beyond the purview of our mundane senses. So indirectly, Jiva Goswami says that Uddhava is telling the gopis that not everyone can see Krishna, but you can see Krishna. Another meaning that he's giving is that you think that Krishna is gone, but actually he's present and you can perceive him. Because virahena mahabhaga mahan me nugraha krita. You're going through this viraha, this mood of separation, but don't think that you're durbhagini, that you're very unfortunate. He says rather mahabhaga. You're very, very glorious. You're very, very fortunate. Mahabhaga me anugraha kritaha. Because you're giving your anugraha, your mercy, not only to me, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that you're giving to everyone. And how are you giving that anugraha? Virahena mahabhaga. Because you're showing the glorious quality of viraha, of separation. So I'm just reviewing a few thoughts we've had in the past, in our previous sessions. In the chapter 12 of the Uttarakanda of Gopal Champu, Jiva Goswami has a chapter that's called Uddhava Spurad Uddhavam, or the bliss, the happiness revealed by Uddhava. It's a happiness they didn't recognize. It's a happiness that devotees don't recognize. We have this viraha, and we think, how can we have a viraha utsav? How can we have a festival of separation? No, I won't go. But it's an utsav for the residents of the spiritual world, and for the devotees in this world, that viraha, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that V means Vishesh Rup, means a special form of raha, and raha means rahasya milan. So it means, rahasya milan means a mysterious union. So viraha Externally means separation, but internally it means union. And Jiva Goswami describes this also in the 370th Anucheda of his Priti Sandarbha. He says, Vipralambo viprakarshena lamba praptir yasha satata. This is the meaning of vipralamba. It means lamba or attainment, to achieve something. Just like pralambasura means to overreach or to try to attain something which you can't get. Lamba means attain something, a vipra from a distance. That's vipralamba. So Uddhava is telling this to the gopis, and Uddhava tells the gopis, Tat evam stutva sakedam eva nivadayamsa. Nivada yamasa. This is from Gopal Champu. Uddhava praised them, and then Uddhava told them, he said, when Krishna wanted to send me to Braj, he spoke to me privately. Gachotava bhajam somya pitro na pritim avaha gopinam vad viyogadim matsandai vimochaya. He said, my dear Uddhava, because you're Somya. Somya means someone who's very gentle. You, Gachat Uddhava, you please go. And Pitro, you please give some pritam, some satisfaction to my parents. But the gopis, you can't give them satisfaction. Not you. Gopinam vatmad viyogadim mad sandai vimochaya. My parents, you can go and you can preach to them. You can try to say something. The gopis, don't even think about it, Uddhava. You can't do it. Rather, you should just stick to my message. And Vishwanath explains in his commentary, this verse we just read. This is from the 46th chapter of the 10th canto. It's the third verse. This is what Krishna told Uddhava before Uddhava left Mathura to go to Vrindavan. And Vishwanath comments on this. It's a very interesting thing. He says, Iti gyapa yati tad vimochanam apimama sandesha eva natu tadvak chatur yadi bihi. That you can release the pain of the gopis by my message, not by your expertise in speech. And this is also very relevant for us as devotees, because people sometimes are suffering. And devotees, sometimes they come and they say, Prabhu, I don't know what to do. I'm psychotic. I have this mental problem. I'm in great anxiety and distress. And sometimes devotees, they say, you should go to a counselor. Well, we try to give them some mental health counseling. But the real solution, Krishna is telling Uddhava, don't try to give any mental health counseling to the gopis. They're gone. You can't give any mental health counseling to them. Rather, the only thing you can give them is mat sandesh, my message. And it's significant. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Sandesha bahubir eva. Bahubir means again and again. Sandesha, in this verse from the 10th canto, is plural. And that's very interesting. Krishna is not saying that Uddhava, go and give them my message, singular, but go and give them my messages. And what does that mean? There's only one message that Krishna gives him. So why does he say plural? Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains, he says, because you have to say this again and again and again. Because these messages from Krishna, the more the gopis hear it, the more they'll respond in different ways, the more they'll understand it in different ways. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also says that Virahena Mahabhaga indicates that by this Viraha, Mahabhaga means very glorious, that the gopis are spreading their glories. The gopis are showing their love for Krishna, their Savatma bhava. They're one-pointed, ekantic love for Krishna. They're showing that to the whole world, and by doing that, they're giving their mercy to the whole world. These are still some things we're reviewing from our previous session, but it's important. We have to look back a little bit to look ahead. So I want to go to a wonderful book that we've been translating called Vrindavan Lilamrita by a devotee named Nanda Kishore Goswami, who was a disciple in the line of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He lived a few hundred years ago. He was a mahant at Nityanandavat, also known as Sringaravat, just near to the Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan. And it's a long story how he had, wonderful story, how he had darshan of Krishna. But Krishna personally gave him information about his leelas. And he wrote this book in Bengali, very famous book in Bengali called Vrindavan Lilamrita, which includes many verses from the Bhagavatam and his own Paya. Paya is a kind of Bengali poetry, Paya Anuvad, or his commentary, explanation of those verses. So he says in chapter 21 that what Uddhava is telling the gopis, Ataiva anugraha viraha karane Muri atishoya kaila paila darshane Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So this verse we're just reading, Uddhava tells the gopis that Mahan me anugraha kritaha, that this great mercy that you're giving, anugraha krita, this is his great mercy. And now Nanda Kishore Goswami is explaining that how did this anugraha, or this great fortune come? Virahena Mahabhaga. It came because of their feelings of separation from Krishna. This message from Krishna came to the gopis because of their feelings of separation. And Uddhava goes on to say, Toma sabara krishneti viraha nahi jabe Brajapuri Krishna tabe napataite tabe Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Toma sabare, all of you, krishneti viraha nahi jabe. He says, when you didn't have those feelings of separation, then Brajapuri Krishna tabina pataiti tabi. Krishna couldn't have sent me here to Braj. The first chapter of the Bhagavata is called Vishad Yoga, or the Yoga of Lamentation, which may sound rather strange because yoga means to unite with God. So that you unite with God through lamentation. But that word Bishad is a compound word of two words together. It's Bish and Ada. Ada means to take, to accept. And Bish means poison. So Bishad literally means the poison that I'm accepting. When we accept the poison of our unfortunate situation, that can become yoga. And my Guru Maharaj called it by another name. He called it Atma Krandana, or the crying of the soul. And when we accept the poison of our situation, gosh, I've been a devotee now for 2 weeks and I still don't have Krishna prema. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Or maybe I've been a devotee for 25 years and I still don't have that. Maybe there's something wrong. And maybe I should stop pretending that I'm such a great elevated devotee. I'm giving class on Facebook. Maybe I should stop pretending like that and just accept the bitter reality. Because reality, no matter how unpleasant it is always preferable to illusion, no matter how cheerful the illusion may appear to be. So, Uddhava is telling the gopis here that because of this feeling of separation, you got to see Krishna. So this is Bishad Yoga. And in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it begins with the phrase, the words, Bishidanta medam vakyam uvacha madhusudana. That Uvacha Madhusudana, Krishna began to speak the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. And why did he speak the Bhagavad Gita? Because Vishidantam idam vakyam. That vakyam he began to speak because he saw the Bishad, the lamentation of Arjuna. So that message of the Bhagavad Gita came because of that lamentation. So what Uddhava is telling the gopis here, the message from me can only come when you had these feelings of lamentation. Otherwise, Krishna couldn't give the message. This favor, he says, this anugraha is there, atta eva anugraha viraha karni. It's there because of that separation. So this is why we observe the Viraha Utsav. It's not that we come together and have a dance and a party. Hooray, hooray, Hare Krishna. Gurudev is gone. That's demoniac. But we come together because there's a message that will come to us. There's an amazing type of union that will come to us if we observe this festival. And for us, it's not a festival of flowers and happiness. It's a festival of lamentation. But the function of it is that we meet with Gurudev through that. This is our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, and this is what's spoken of in the 47th chapter of the 10th canto, in this Brahmara-Gita, which is one of the reasons why some acharyas say that this chapter of the Bhagavatam is the most important chapter. More important than Krishna's Janma Leela, more important than the first chapter of the Bhagavatam, which is very important, more important than the Rasa Panchadhyaya, with the 5 chapters describing the Rasa Leela. This Brahmara-Gita is the most important. Why? Because this Brahmara-Gita is the foundation for Gaura Leela. And in this Brahmara-Gita, we find all the moods of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he exhibited in the Gambhira in Jagannath Puri. And therefore, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he describes that when Mahaprabhu was there in the Gambhira, he was experiencing the feelings of Radha while Uddhava was giving that message from this Brahmara-Gita. So it's a very important thing for us to understand. And from this, now I've mostly finished our review. From this, we understand something of the importance of the qualification of the listener and the speaker. Jiva Goswami in Bhakti Sandarbha and Anucheda 203, he describes 2 types of speakers, and we spoke about this in our last 2 sessions. Vakta sarago nirago dvivida parikirtitaha sarago lalupa kami tad uktam hrinna samsprisat. He says there's 2 types of speakers, the Vakta and the Saraga. Amongst the Vaktas or the speakers is the Sarag and the Nirag. The Sarag Vakta is a speaker who has material desires. The Nirag Vakta is a speaker who doesn't have material desires. Sarago lalupo kami tad uktam hrinna samsprisat. That speaker who has material desires, it doesn't touch the heart. Uktam hrinna samsprisat. Samsprisat means to touch. It doesn't touch the heart. Upadeshan karoti eva na parikshan karoti cha apariksyo padishtam yal lokanasayata tadbhavet. That if someone gives upadesha, instructions, but na pariksham karoti eva, they've not examined Shastra very deeply. They don't understand the subject matter very deeply. Maybe they heard Gurudev say something. But we should understand, Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jaiva Dharma, he says that Gurudev speaks in 2 ways, Tatkalika and Sarvakalika. Tatkalika means an instruction for a certain time and place. I'll give you an example. Srila Prabhupada once gave sannyas to 2 different young men in the Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan. And then he told them, you should come to my room, I'll give you the sannyas mantra and some instructions. And so the first devotee who came there, He offered obeisances. Prabhupada gave him the mantra, and Prabhupada told him then that you should travel. A sannyasi should never stay in one place. You should travel everywhere and preach. Yes, Srila Prabhupada. He offered obeisances and left. The next devotee, sannyasi devotee, came in. And Prabhupada gave him the mantra. And Prabhupada told him, I want you to stay here in Vrindavan and teach, and don't travel anywhere. You stay here. So they're two completely contradictory statements. And if you take one of them out of context and try to say this is what Prabhupada meant, or as Niranjan Maharaj sometimes comments, he says that Gurudev tells you, turn the boat right. And so you're turning the boat right. But it doesn't mean you have to always turn the boat right. Because if you're always turning the boat right, you may not go anywhere. You just go in circles. So we have to see the context of what Gurudev says. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says this is the meaning of tatkalika. Tatkalika means a certain instruction for a certain place in time. And there's many examples of that. We won't go in there. Sarvakalika means instructions which are meant for all time and all place. The instruction to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. That's Sarvakalika, given to everyone. But the particular details of how best to practice one's bhajan will be different according to different devotees. Trying to remember the name of the devotee. Your godbrother from France, speaks French, learned devotee, wears white. He published Jamuna's cookbook for, I can't remember his name. Anyway, he had a lot of association with Prabhupada. And I saw an interview with him recently, and he, what is his name? It's right on the tip of my tongue. He he mentioned a story of Srila Prabhupada, that some devotee came to Prabhupada and said, I have this idea of a book, 100 steps to pure bhakti, something like that. And Prabhupada said, this is nonsense. He said, because those steps are not the same for everyone. Bhakti is such a very individual and distinct, different thing for everyone. Yogeshwar Prabhu, he spoke like this. So if someone hasn't, na parikshan karoti eva, Jiva Goswami, he's quoting this verse, this is from Brahma-vaivarta Purana. If someone hasn't considered this, the subject matter very carefully, then they may say that Srila Prabhupada, he said that sannyasis should never stay in one place, and all of them should travel. But they don't see that there's also some exceptions that Srila Prabhupada gave, because he's speaking according to the time and place. And so if someone, eva na pariksham karoti, they haven't considered carefully the subject matter, then apariksho padishtam ya lokanashaya tadbhavet. Their words may cause big trouble for everyone. It's harmful. Lokanashaya literally means that it'll destroy the common people. You just take something out of context. So this consideration has to be done very deeply, and this takes place when we have Shravan Adhikar, or the qualification to hear. And in his Gita Bhashya commentary on Bhagavad Gita, Srila Ramanujacharya explains there's three aspects of Shravana Adhikar, qualification to hear: Pranipat, Pariprashna, and Seva. That we have to submit ourselves to the speaker, to the subject matter. We have to surrender to that. We have to Pariprashna, we have to ask relevant questions which are not challenging to the speaker, and we have to express whatever doubt we have. If something doesn't make sense to us, but we don't say it, then that doubt, samsayatma vinashati, Krishna says in the Gita, that doubt may destroy you. You have to be simple and honest. And, Guru Maharaj, I don't understand why you said this. It doesn't make sense according to this other perspective. Why you told this sannyasi to stay in Vrindavan, but you told all the sannyasis they should always travel. We should express our doubt. And thirdly, seva. Ramanujacharya points out that we have to render service to the message and to the speaker. That's our tradition. Right? So from there, we went, we're still reviewing a little bit, There's a lot of foundation needed to go where we want to go today. To the Vaishnava Kanda of the Skanda Purana, chapter 3. And this is something actually we printed in issue number 11 of our Krishna Katamrita magazine. It's a translation done by Gopi Pranadana Prabhu for us, very kindly. And it's described there in the Skanda Purana. Shrotarota nirupyante Srimad Vishnupatasrayaha pravara abarascheti shrotaro dvivida mataha. Now we're going to speak about the Shrota Jana. Shrota means the listeners. And he says there's two types, dvivida, two types, pravara and avara. There's a superior and the inferior listener. And we spoke at length about the first, there's different types of listeners, and we spoke at length about some of them. I'm not going to go in depth about them again today. We're just going to mention them very, very briefly, kind of a running look, so we can go on. So, first of all, he says pravara, the superior listeners. Chatako hamsa shuko manadayas tatam. Avara brika burunda brisha stradraya prakirtita. The pravara, shrota janas, or the superior listeners, are the sparrow or the chataka bird, the hamsa, the parrot, the hamsa swan, the shuka, the parrot, the mina, the fish, and others. And we explained something about the qualities of each one of these listeners and why this makes them a superior listener. The chataka bird, the swan, the parrot, and the mina, the fish. And then he says the avara, the inferior listeners, are the brika. That's the first one he mentions. The brika means the wolf. The Burundi bird, the brisha, the bull, the camel, and others. And we gave, again, some description about those. And the Burundi bird, he's someone who has heard a little bit, but he hasn't heard from Gurudev. He hasn't practiced it yet. And he's just like living like the Burundi bird is a bird which lives in the Himalayan mountains. And the example is given of the Burundi bird because he's really high. He's really high up. But he's useless because he hasn't actually heard properly. And what does it mean to hear properly? It means we have to have Shravan Adhikar. Once Kuresh is one of the senior disciples of Ramanujacharya. He's very famous, he's a great scholar. Very exalted personality, and many wonderful stories about him. Very, very exalted devotee. And once he came to Ramanuja and he asked, he said, Guru Maharaj, can you please explain to me the meaning of the Charama Shloka? The most important verse in Bhagavata, Sarva Dharman Parityaga Mame Kamasharanam Braja. I don't understand. What does it mean? You should give up Dharma. And then you'll protect us from pop. Aren't we supposed to give up pop? And then we'll get Dharma? And what is the meaning of this verse? So Ramanuja looked at him and he said that if you surrender and beg alms for 1 year, then you can understand the meaning of this verse and you can come back to me and I'll explain it to you. And Qureshi said, Guru Maharaj, this world's a very temporary place. I don't know if I'm going to live that long. What if I die before then? Please, can you give me the meaning of this verse? And Ramanuja thought for a moment. He said, okay, if you go for 1 month and beg alms without knowing where you're going to get your alms from, and you behave in a very humble way, then you can come back to me and I'll explain this verse. And so he did like that. It's a little hard for us to relate to today, isn't it? Because when we have a question, we just go to Google, right? We go to the Google Guru, or we go to the folio. What does Prabhupada say? Now, I know, I went. Huh? But this is like the Burundi bird. You can't cheat and just Google something online. Oh yes, I Googled it, so I understand it. And now I can share this with everybody. Rather, Shushusho Shadadanasha Vasudeva Kata Ruchi Shan Maha Sevaya Viprapunya Tirtana Sevada. The first canto of the Bhagavatam instructs us that we have to render service to that personality. and by rendering service to them, and by hearing, and that hearing is also a service. It's a little difficult for us to understand because for us in this material world, looking at things is sense gratification. We were commenting the other day, there's a song I remember when I was growing up. The boys watch the girls while the girls watch the boys while the world goes by. This is this world. The boys are watching the girls are watching the boys, and the world goes by. Because we're looking for our personal sense gratification. And therefore it's hard for us to understand the meaning of darshan. Darshan doesn't mean that I see the Lord, it means He sees me. It means that I come before Him and I submit myself in a humble way by which He'll want to see me. Similarly, we don't understand the meaning of hearing. And we think that hearing means we go to a rock concert and blow out your eardrums. That's what hearing means. It means that I'm hearing something that I like. And even sometimes devotees, they have attachments. And I still like the Beatles, they say this or that. And they listen sometimes to some old songs or something. Because we have this attachment for hearing for our pleasure. Or we're thinking that hearing means that I'm going to get some information. And I see this with a lot of devotees also. They think I'm a very expert listener. And so they come to class with a notepad and a pen. And they're writing everything down. I was hearing from my Siksha Guru for 10 years. And he forbade me. I was taking notes in the beginning because he would quote so many verses and so many songs and different things and commentaries. And I was, oh my God, I got to get all this. And I was making, and he's, what are you doing? Stop it. And he wouldn't let me do that. So then I brought a tape recorder. And he said, what are you doing? And he wouldn't let me tape record it. So I thought, well, I'm a Bideshi, I'm a Western devotee. I grew up with James Bond. And I'm very expert. So I took a small tape recorder and I put it inside my bead bag. Turned it on, and I put it down in front of him. Ha, I'm very smart. And there's a devotee sitting right next to me, and very loudly in front of everybody said, Madhavananda, why did you put your tape recorder inside the bead bag like that? Oh God. And then Prabhu chastised me again. What are you doing? Nonsense, no recording. And then I noticed other people are making recordings. So I said, oh, they're doing all, no, you're not allowed. Why? And by that he's teaching that what he's giving is not just something for information. And we have this disease in the West that we think I'm a good listener if I write everything down, because then I'll remember it. And that writing is useful. Prabhupada said we should, my Guru Maharaj told me I should do that. But that's not actually proper hearing. We may do that also. But proper hearing means we have these three qualifications: pranipat, pariprashna, and seva. We submit ourselves to the speaker, to the subject. We inquire in a submissive way, and we render service. And that gives us qualification to hear. So Kuresh, after he did that for 1 month, he came back to Ramanuja, and Ramanuja said, now I'll explain to you the Sarvadharman Parityagya verse. We can't relate to that. We think, oh, it's not so hard. I'll just take some notes in the class and I'll get everything. But if we don't do service, then we can't understand. If we do service, you may not remember, you won't remember all the information that anybody speaks. Even a husband can't remember everything his wife says, right? Or wife, or you can't remember everything your children are saying. What to speak, we're hearing from Gurudev. But the purpose of Gurudev is not informational. That's also some purpose. Prabhupada wanted devotees to memorize verses. Prabhupada wanted devotees to understand certain principles. But the main thing is that we should imbibe it in our heart. We often give the example of Jayananda Prabhu, who one day he approached Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And he said, Maharaj, I'm not sure if I'm reciting, if I'm pronouncing the Gayatri mantra correctly or not. And so Tamal Krishna was asking, he said, so what are you saying? And Jayananda Prabhu spoke something, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj's eyes got very big. He said, oh my God, it was like he just butchered it. He couldn't pronounce the Sanskrit properly at all. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj brought him, Jayananda, to Srila Prabhupada. And he said, Prabhupada, He's not pronouncing the Gayatri mantra correctly at all. Prabhupada said, what are you saying? And then Jayananda Prabhu, he said his snick, yam, whoop, whatever, made these funny sounds. And Prabhupada just started laughing and laughing. Prabhupada said, anyway, you just go on and chant Hare Krishna. But Jayananda Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada told the devotees after Jayananda Prabhu passed away that we should keep his picture on the Rath Yatra card and we should observe his disappearance day every year. In other words, Srila Prabhupada acknowledged him as a great saint, not because of his expertise in Sanskrit pronunciation, not because of his expertise in information, but because of his service attitude to Srila Prabhupada. So that's Shravan Adhikar. The Burundi, the Brika, the wolf, we mentioned before. I want to go on a little bit more with that because after our last session, I remembered a couple verses we printed before from the Shiva Purana. And I want to use those to explain a little more about the wolf. Yastudan Rasikan Chotrin Virod Yagno Briko Hisaha. The Brika, he's a person who gives trouble to the listeners. And we mentioned this, how that sometimes someone challenges the speaker in the Bhagavatam class, so they want to argue with the speaker in the Bhagavatam class. And I have to say, I've seen that too many times over the years. But would you've seen this so many times over the years. And it disturbs the whole atmosphere. There's an atmosphere there. And honestly speaking, what is important is not so much that the speaker gets everything right, because you're always going to make some mistake. Krishna promises us in the Bhagavad Gita that every endeavor is covered by some fault. Everybody's going to make some mistake. It's not that the Bhagavatam class has to be perfect. Of course, we should do the best we can. We should quote Shastra. We should be very careful in considering before we speak, as we were hearing from Jiva Goswami quoting Brahma-Vivarta Purana in his Bhakti Sandarbha. Otherwise, it may cause troubles. But the most important thing is not how you pronounce. The most important thing is not even how Siddhanta you know, but the heart that you have. And this is exhibited by Jayananda Prabhu. Once one devotee came to Jayananda and he said, we're working on the Rath Yatra card all day. I'm really hungry. We should get some prasadam. This is a lot of hard work. And Jayananda Prabhu reached over and there was a can of axle grease. This very heavy kind of oily grease that they use to lubricate the axles of the Rath Yatra cart. And Jayananda reached into that can and took out a handful of that grease and ate it. It's a poisonous thing. It's crazy. He ate that. And he said, this is my prasadam. Would you like some? That's okay. The devotee declined. So that's not something you can imitate, but that's something we understand his exalted position of his mood. And we have so much philosophy and so many verses and things, but all of those verses and things are meant just to convince us that we should surrender to Guru completely, and we should hear properly from Guru, and we should render service to him. That's the function of all those things. So the Brika is someone, he disturbs that atmosphere. It's a simple atmosphere. And you may say something wrong in the class, but then you don't have to argue with the person because you'll give class the next day and the other person said something wrong. So the next day, maybe politely in a gentle way or an indirect way, you can correct the mistake that was said before. It's no problem. The correction really comes in our heart. It's not just a Siddhantic thing. And so many passionate people, they're self-appointed reformers. They want to appoint themselves as being the critic, the fault finder of everyone else, and they're going to save the world because they know the absolute Siddhanta, because I heard from Gauragovinda Maharaj, I heard from this exalted sadhu or that one, and therefore I know. But not just because you've heard. So many people hear from Guru, but many of them misunderstand because they're not hearing properly. So in the Shiva Purana, in the first canto, chapter 6, there's 2 verses that speak about etiquette and hearing. Ye nandante chavaktaram katam chemam suravinim bhavanti sunaka bhuktva dukam janma satam hite. That someone who goes and ye nindanti chavaktaram katam, who speaks, they do some criticism, ninda. And Sridhar Swami Bhavarti Deepika, he defines ninda. What is it? Nindari? Nindari katash dosha kirtanam. That ninda means that you do some kirtan of the dosha or the faults of someone else. You speak about it. Doesn't mean that you're right or wrong. It's not saying that. The person may be wrong. Nindanam dosha kirtanam. A little voice on WhatsApp told me. Nindanam dosha kirtanam. That you do some kirtan, you speak about someone's dosha. That's the definition of ninda. So ye nindanti chavaktaram katam. You speak, you do some ninda to the speaker of the Bhagavatam class. This is speaking about proper etiquette. What happens to you? Bhavanti shunaka bhutva dukam janma satam ite. You'll take birth as a dog. And you'll bhutva dukam janma satam. You'll have a very miserable life for 100 births. You're going to suffer. That's the result of speaking ill of the Bhagavatam speaker. Katayam vartamanayam durvadam ye vedanti hi bhukvate narakandaram bhavanti garda bhastata. And someone who argues while the katha is going on, then that person, bhukvate narakandaram, they go to naraka, they go to hell. And then after getting some nice tortures there, then bhavanti garda bhastataha. They take birth as a donkey. So we should understand what is proper hearing. Now, in our previous session, I should look back a little bit, when we speak about the hangsa, avara, or the ansa pravara, listener, the listener, the shrota, who is like a swan. He takes the essence. And we gave an example of our Guru Maharaj, how once he came to Mayapur, Iskand Mayapur, with a Gaudiya Mat sannyasi, who was very curious and eager to see what's this place like. And this sannyasi was from Orissa and didn't understand any English. And they were attending the Bhagavatam class every day here in Mayapur. And that sannyasi was nodding his head and looking very happy in the class. And Guru Maharaj asked him one day, he said, "You didn't understand English? Why do you look so happy and you're nodding your head during the English class?" He said, "It's true." The sannyasi told him, "I don't understand English, but sometimes they quote a verse." Or they say some Bengali or Sanskrit word, and I understand that. And he's appreciating that. So that is a pravara, shrota. Shrota, that's a superior listener who's compared to a swan, who takes the essence. And because, as we mentioned in a previous session, if we insist on perfection, first of all, if you want to insist on perfection in others, you should first have it yourself. And if we want to make a sign and put it on the door that only nirag bhaktas here, only speakers without material desires are allowed to give class, then who's going to give class? And we may say, well, we really want to hear from the nirag bhakta. We want to hear from the speakers who have no material desires, not the sarag bhakta, or the speakers with material desires. It'll be a good day. But first of all, who's going to determine who that nirag bhakta is? It's a big problem in our society. And secondly, it's going to discourage everyone, and devotees won't want to speak, and then we'll fail to fulfill one of the important instructions of Srila Prabhupada. That important instruction of Srila Prabhupada was that every day we should have a Bhagavatam class in our society, and different devotees should speak. It's a very important instruction. Right? So, the Shiva Purana speaks about these two persons who are like the brika, the wolf coming in, disturbs the whole atmosphere, and the result of those persons. Right? So then we want to go on now to again to the Skanda Purana. And this is in the 4th chapter, text 18 of the Vaishnava Kanda. Sarvam Shrutam Upadate Sarasaranda Dirvasha Swadu Draksham Kalim Chapi Nirvishesham Yata Brishaha. And this is the Brisha. This is the nature, the Brisha Shrotak, or the listener who's like a bull. We wrote an article some years ago. I don't know if I could find it or not. Maybe I can look it up here real quick. It's quite an interesting thing. Let me see if I can find it. We wrote an article called The Bull and the Bhagavata. And it was based on an article that we found in the Oriya newspaper. Let's see if I can find that. Yeah, there it is. There's a saying in Oriya language, Sanda Sunichi Bhagavat. Sanda means a bull. Sanda Sunichi Bhagavat. What's the value of a bull hearing the Bhagavat? And the Skanda Purana says that the bull, he's a listener who, he doesn't distinguish, just like the bull. The bull, he eats some dry oil cakes or he eats some nice grapes, and he doesn't make any difference. He just eats whatever you give him, pretty much, whatever is put before him. So a listener who is like the bull, he just accepts everything that he hears. It must be true. I heard it in the Bhagavatam class. A Prabhupada disciple said it. He's a Maharaj, a sannyasi. He's a guru. He's a GBC. And he said it. It must be true. In a simple kind of way. And then trouble comes. We shouldn't be so simplistic. Srila Prabhupada, in one lecture in 1968 in 26 Second Avenue, to these brand new devotees. I could share this lecture with someone if they want. I don't have it in front of me. But Prabhupada told them, he said, don't just accept what I say blindly. Oh, Swamiji says, therefore it must be true. You have to think about it. You have to consider it. Why did Gurudev say that? Gurudev said, turn the boat right. But why did he say that? Does it mean I should always turn the boat right? So this is like the Brisha, or the Sunda. Sunda means the bull in Oriya. But this is a side story. In 2004, in March, there was they'd had a tradition for 22 years going on of a Bhagavat Saptaha at the Kapalishwara Mahadev temple in Old Bhubaneswar. And just as they're getting ready to have the katha, the speaker's sitting down, all the listeners are there and everything, all of a sudden this big bull came into the compound. And he sat down next to the devotees. And I don't know if you ever smelled a bull's breath. They're not always so fragrant. And they tried to drive him out with some sticks and things. The Oriya people, they know, local people know how to move the bulls. They took some stick and trying to move. But that bull was, as we say in American English, is very bullish, which means he's very, very stubborn. And he wouldn't move. So, okay, whatever. So they just let him sit there. So then, as soon as the katha finished, then the bull got up and walked away. Okay. The next day, as soon as the katha was starting, the bull showed up again. And again he sat down, and again he sat there the whole time during the katha. When the katha finished, he got up and left again. And this went on every day for 1 week. And so they remembered that. And the next year, they'd forgotten about it. The next year, they'd forgotten until the first day of the Bhagavat Sapta, and the same bull shows up at the beginning of the katha, and he did the same thing. And this happened 3 years in a row, with that same bull was coming every day. So, although the Skanda Purana speaks ill of the Brisha Shrotak, or the listener who's like a bull, sometimes even a bull can hear the Bhagavatam nicely. So that's the nature of the bull. Sa ustro madaram munchan viparite rametaya yata nimbam charat ustro Hitvamram apitad yutam. Then there's a ustra. An ustra is a camel. The camel, he doesn't understand. He rejects what's sweet and he takes pleasure in just the opposite. He's just like Dhenukasura. Dhenukasura is a donkey, but he's living in a forest of nectar. And all the tall trees are there. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in Chaitanya Siksamrita, he says that Dhenukasura is someone who's attached to external things. And he becomes disturbed when he sees the cowherd boys climbing the tall trees and getting the sweet fruit that he can't take. And so Dhenukasura starts criticizing him. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says he makes a loud, obnoxious noise. Have you ever heard a donkey singing? I don't want to make that sound. He makes a very loud, obnoxious noise. He started making this big noise and screaming at the boys, "You can't climb the tree. You're not allowed to do that." And Bhaktivinoda says this is a nature of someone who's more attached to rules and regulations and Varnashram Dharma. And when they see someone going for the nectar, they become disturbed. He says, but Vaishnavas have to be saragrahi. We have to be searching for the essence of things. We have to be searching for the nectar. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, one year during Brajmandal Parikrama, in a lecture he gave at Radhakund, and during which he'd been speaking from the Upanishads for like a week. And all the Babajis there were freaking out. What is he coming to Radhakund and speaking on the Upanishads? You know, you're not this body, and all this kind of philosophy. And after a week or so, that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta gave another lecture, and he said that for so many days, we've been speaking about this thing. We've been speaking about what is the anarthas. But it's not enough to understand what is the anartha. We should understand what is the artha, what is the goal. If we just strive for anartha nibritti, or to become free from anarthas, which I see many devotees honestly doing. They're just so absorbed. I can't look at women. I won't look at women. Oh my God, I won't see it. Women aren't Maya. They're all Maya. And they have, sometimes the girls think that way about the men. Because they're just absorbed in thinking about sensual things in a subtle way. And if that is our focus, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says that your result will be Nirvisesha Shunyavad, you may become an impersonalist. And honestly speaking, Bhaktivinoda speaks about this in his Bhakti Tattva Vivek. Sometimes the Mayavadis, they're more in control of their senses than the devotees. We've seen like this. I gave a talk to some Chinese devotees many years ago in Jagannath Puri, and we were speaking about different types of Bhakti Abhas, or something which is like a semblance of bhakti. There's Chaya Bhakti Abhas and there's Pratibimba Bhakti Abhas. And we spoke about the difference between the two according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Chaya Bhakti Abhas is like a shadow. Like you have a shadow of a tree. And Pratibimba Bhakti Abhas is like the reflection in the lake. Now of the two, you have a reflection of a tree in the water and you have a shadow of the tree. Which looks better? The reflection. You can see the color, you can see more individual form and things, whereas a shadow is just some kind of blurred, grayish thing. But Bhaktivinoda says that always and necessarily, Chaya Bhakti Abhas is better than Pratibimba Bhakti Abhas. The shadow is better. Why? Because the shadow is connected to the tree, and the reflection is not. And the reflection, the Pratibimba Bhakti Abhas, is like that kind of Bhakti Abhas that the impersonalists do. I've seen in Jagannath Puri, there's some Mayavadis. I once went inside of the Govardhan Mutt, which is the place of the Shankaracharya in Puri. And they don't allow Westerners inside, but I didn't know. I just went inside, and they have a deity of Krishna there. And they recite prayers to Krishna, to Jagannath. But they're impersonalists. They're doing some kind of bhakti, but that bhakti, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, is Pratibimba Bhakti Abhas. It's like a reflection. And the Chaya Bhakti Abhas, even though doesn't look as good, even though the devotee maybe can't control his senses as well, but the Chaya Bhakti Abhas is better than the Pratibimba Bhakti Abhas. So the camel is someone, he's not, he doesn't understand what is sweet. He thinks that nobody should have anything sweet. Rather, you should just do austerities. And the camel, he likes to eat thorny plants. And why does he like to eat thorny plants? Because it makes his mouth bleed. And then he drinks his own blood, and he thinks this is very, very nice. Who wants these grapes and mangoes and things? And these thorns, these are much, much better. And so in a similar way, sometimes devotees even, they think that Vanashram Dharma, that's the real thing. And who wants this speaking about the gopis and the 10th canto, the Bhagavatam and things. So such a person, it said in Skanda Purana, Yata nimbam charot yustro hitvam ram apitad yutam. They leave the mangoes aside. The nimbam means a mango. And rather, they take that lemons, they just eat the lemons, and they take this thing. And then he goes on to say, Anyepi bahavo bheda dvayar bringa karadaya vigyayas tattadacharas tattat prakriti sambhavai. There's so many other different listeners also. He says, like the bee and the donkey. The bee is a listener who takes a little from different sources. And that's also very good. But he takes the sweet things. He's not like a fly. The fly and the bee, they're both doing something similar. They're going to many, many different places, and they stay just for a few minutes. But the fly is looking for nasty, dead things and stool. Whereas the bee is just going and taking nectar, a little nectar from each flower. So that's another type of listener who's doing that service for Gurudev, where they're hearing and taking some nectar. And then there's the donkey, Karadaya. The Karadaya, a Shruta listener, is someone who carries a heavy load. And he insists in a very, what's the word, in a very Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he says in a very dictionary kind of way. You're hearing something. There's a saying in America, I saw on a bumper sticker once. It said, Jesus said it, I believe it, and that settles it. Never mind thinking about it. And sometimes we do the same thing with Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada said it, I believe it, that settles it. Prabhupada said, turn the boat right. So I should turn the boat right, never ever turn the boat left, never ever go straight. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur calls such a person, their understanding, a lexicographical understanding. Lexicography is the science of making a dictionary, a lexicon. And someone who has a lexicographical understanding means it's like a dictionary understanding. And that's the Karadaya Shrotak, the listener who's like a donkey. He just carries a heavy burden, and he doesn't know why he's carrying it. He doesn't think about it. He's just carrying it. And then the Skanda Purana goes on to explain. Yastit vambi mukam pranamya viditva chaktanya vado hare lila shrotum abhipsate tinipuno namrota klipyanjali shishyavisasito nichintana para prashni nirukta suchir nityam Krishna jana priyo nigati shrota savai bhaktribi. That a proper listener is someone who comes before the speaker, and it says directly that pranamya, they fold their hands. And what is the necessity of doing this? What is the difference between this and this? It's body language. When you do this, you're saying, hey, everybody pay attention to me. I have an announcement, or I'm a great person. Look at me, right? That's what that means. But when you do this, it means I'm finished with that. It means I'm submitting myself before you. So literally, sometimes when we come before Gurudev, we can listen like this. And then that discussion that goes back and forth, as we mentioned, I think in our previous session, maybe two back, there's three types of discussions, Vada, Jalpa, and Vitanda. That's a Vada discussion in the mode of goodness. We just want to know the truth, and you're submitting yourself. Pranipat, Pariprashna, and Seva. The Jalpa discussions in the mode of passion. And one or both persons just want to be heard. And they'll just go on and on and on, telling you so many things about their family and this and that. And you really may not be interested at all. But they just want to hear themselves speak. That's a discussion in the mode of passion. And sometimes Bhagavatam classes can be like that too. So, and then there's Vitanda. And Vitanda discussion is in the mode of ignorance. And in the Vitanda discussion, the speaker just wants to win. And he'll say any damn thing just so he can win the argument. And he thinks that's the purpose of discussion, so that I can defeat other people. Well, we want a Vada discussion, which is described here in Skanda Purana, that you come with folded hands as a trusting disciple. And someone we can trust, someone who can keep some things confidential. And he bows down, he avoids other talks. Such a person, that disciple, he's humble, these are the qualities, he's very expert, he's eager to hear, he's serious to give careful thought to what he hears, he likes to ask questions, he's pure and always affectionate to Krishna's devotees. Shrota Savai Bhakti Bihi. That person is a proper listener. So these three elements are required for Krishna Katha to take place. There should be a speaker, a listener, and Krishna Katha. You may have the most qualified speaker, just as we were hearing Yogeshwar Prabhu told another story about Srila Prabhupada that we mentioned in the previous session also, that Prabhupada gave a lecture once in France. He was getting ready to give a lecture. They were doing kirtan with a group of hippies. The devotees were doing kirtan. And the hippies were chanting very loud, and everybody liked the kirtan. And then they brought out Prabhupada's Vyasa-san, this big, huge Vyasa-san. And those students started shouting and saying bad things about Prabhupada. In French, Prabhupada couldn't understand. He asked Yogeshwar Prabhu, what are they saying? And Yogeshwar, he didn't want to say, they're saying bad words about Srila Prabhupada, Hare Krishna. And so he said, Prabhupada, they're angry. Why are you sitting on this big seat? And they're saying things. And Prabhupada said, then just do kirtan. The most qualified speaker was there. But because the listeners weren't qualified, then Krishna Katha didn't take place. You may have, on the other hand, you may have qualified listeners and a qualified speaker, but still that Sangha doesn't take place unless it's Krishna Katha. If you just speak some Gramya Katha, did you hear about the COVID virus or this thing or that thing or what's going on in the news? And maybe sometimes we talk about those things. But that's not meant to be the essence of our Sangha. Parasparama Katanam Pavanam Bhagavad-yasa. The Bhagavatam 11th Canto 330 says that we want to hear that Pavanam Yasa, the Yasa, the glories of Krishna, which are Pavana, which are very purifying. We want direct Krishna Katha. So an eager, qualified listener will attract a qualified speaker, and in their exchange, Krishna will appear. Krishna says in the Gita, Bhakti-mam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tatvataha, that I appear, or I'm understood, when someone has bhakti. So similarly, to understand Bhagavad Gita, to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, requires bhakti. Pranipat pariprashna seva. We have to submit ourselves to that speaker. That's a Vada discussion. That's a Vada event in the mode of goodness. Again, in the Gita, Krishna says that understanding of him is relative to the degree of our surrender. Krishna says, Yeyatam mam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyam. According to how someone approaches me, I reciprocate accordingly. They'll understand in an according way. So someone's coming to class wanting to collect a lot of information, because I know he always tells good stories, and I want to get some of those stories so I can tell them also. I want to collect this thing or that thing. Then you'll get that. You'll get that information. But you may not get the bhakti that speaker is coming to give. Again, in the Bhagavatam, in 3.9.11, there's an important verse, Tateva pranaya setad anugrahaya. That anugraha, that mercy, is manifested by the Lord that Tadvapu Pranaya say, he manifests a particular form according to the mood of the devotees. In the Chaitanya Bhagavat, it's said there that the same thing, that according to the mood of the devotee, the Lord manifests a corresponding form. In the Bhagavatam, the 10th canto, 1st chapter, text 16, it said, Vasudeva Kata Prashna, Purisham Strim Punatihi, Vaktaram Prachitam Shrutram Statpada Salilam Yata. That there's 3 different types of persons taking part in Krishna Kata. There's a Vakta, the speaker. There's the Pracharak, or Prachakam. The Prachakam means someone who's asking questions. And then there's the speaker, there's the someone who's inquiring, and someone, Prabhupada translates this, or they just translate, Prabhupada translates this. The Ganges emanating from the toe of Lord Vishnu purifies the 3 worlds, the upper, middle, and lower planetary systems. Similarly, when one asks questions about the pastimes and characteristics of Lord Vasudeva Krishna, 3 varieties of men are purified. The speaker, or the preacher, someone who inquires, and the people who listen in general. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary says, Pada Salilam Yata, that Harikatha purifies 3 types of persons. Just like Charnamrita, of the Shalagram, or the deity, purifies 3 types of persons. Someone who puts it on their head, someone who drinks it, and someone who does both. So he says that this means that these topics, Vasudeva Kata Prashna, these topics about Krishna, they're just like Pada Salilam Yata, that water which comes, Pada means of the foot, which comes from the foot of Lord Vishnu, which is the Ganga. So it purifies persons, and the Ganga purifies the upper planetary systems, the heavenly planets. It purifies the middle planetary systems, where we're at, and it purifies the lower planetary systems. So similarly, topics of Krishna purifies 3 types of persons: the speaker, the inquirer, and the listener, in descending order. And he says that the Harikatha, I'm happy to say this, is most purifying for the speaker. The speaker gets the most benefit. Because he does both things. He puts it on his head, and he also takes it. He also drinks it. It's like Charnamrita. Someone who puts it on their head, that's good. Someone who drinks it, that's good. But someone who does both, they drink it and they put it on their head, they get the most benefit. So it's the most purifying for the speaker. It's the least purifying. Some purification is there. But for someone who's listening, they get some purification. But more purification than that lowest person is a person who inquires. They get more. But the most is given by the person who speaks. Again, in the Bhagavatam, in the 1st canto, there's a famous verse my Guru Maharaj would recite every day. Yashim Vaishriyamanayam Krishne Padamapurishe Bhakti Udpadite Pumsa Shoka Moha Bhayapaha. That this Bhagavatam, just by hearing the Bhagavatam, Bhakti Udpadite Pumsha, you just hear the Bhagavatam, then it's going to give bhakti. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments on this verse. He says, Samhitayaha Prema Sadanat Avamaha. That this verse shows that the Bhagavatam gives prema. Yasham Shriyamanaya Yameva Kim Punat Shrutayam. That just by hearing it, prema arises. But then he says, Kintaram, but, Kintaram Kirtayamanayam, Kintaram Kirtitayam. Then what to speak of the greater effect if you engage other people in hearing it? You organize a program. Mataji's organizing programs, right? You're engaging, you're asking everyone to come together to hear Krishna Katha. You get even more benefit. You get more benefit than the persons who are coming and listening because you're organizing the program. And then he says, even a greater effect, though, is given by someone who speaks it. And then even greater effect than that is if you engage other people in speaking it. And this is a movement of Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, in the very first days, very early days, and I was reading, and Prabhupada was there in Canada, I forget what's the place, Anyway, Prabhupada told Malati, said, so you speak. She'd only been a devotee for a few weeks. You say something. Many times Prabhupada would have Jamuna speak or different devotees speak right in front, because that was Srila Prabhupada's desire. But what do they speak? They speak what they've heard. According to their qualification as a listener, they can understand. Because, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur once said about Srila Prabhupada, I've marked him. He likes to hear. Because someone who likes to hear, someone who's a good listener, they can become a good speaker. And that's why we were discussing in our last session how these two things are very much caught up together. And many times we stress about the qualification, the elevated qualification of a speaker. And Hari Bhakti Vilas, in the 10th Vilas, there's a lot of verses about the qualification of a speaker and who should be allowed to speak. And it's said there, Shastra Vyasasaya Chabhave Purvesham Loka Vishrutam, that the only person you should allow to speak, to give a class, it should be someone who's Shastra Vyasasya, who understands Shastra. And as we were hearing a little earlier, someone who's contemplated it very deeply. Otherwise, it causes problems. This is the duty of the speaker. And in our previous session, we were comparing it to offering artik to the deity. Giving classes like offering artik to the deity. Just like when you offer artik to the deity, you don't offer, I mentioned you don't offer a sparkler. Or maybe we'll throw some firecrackers at the deity Sadhya. That's really exciting. What is this incense? That's boring. I have a better idea. No, you offer what you've been told to offer. And doing that, you're just there on behalf of your Gurudev, because he can't be there. So similarly, a speaker should think that my Gurudev should be speaking. But because he's in some other planet preaching, he's some other place right now, he can't be here. Therefore, I'm doing this on his behalf. And what does it mean to do it on his behalf? I should repeat what I've heard from him. And I should quote Shastra. As we mentioned previously also, Sadhu, Shastra, Guru, Vakya. These three things are there. Bhakti Vigamara speaks about this. That first of all, we hear from Sadhu. And what do we hear from Sadhu? We hear Shastra. Sadhu is someone who speaks Shastra. We shouldn't speculate. And then by understanding Shastra, you'll understand who is Guru. So we should, he says in Hari Bhakti Vilas, it says only someone who knows Shastra very well should be allowed to speak. But then it says, but, if there's no such speaker, what do we do? You have a small group of new devotees, and they heard from Srila Prabhupada in 26 Second Avenue. And Prabhupada left. He went to San Francisco. Later he came back to India. And what did those devotees do? They repeated what they heard from Srila Prabhupada. So the Hari Bhakti Vilas, he says that even if there's no proper speaker, even if there's no inquisitive listeners, not very many, maybe one or two, one should never give up discussing topics about Krishna. And he says that Satam Madhunikanancha Katam Bandhu Shikirtaya. You can always discuss about Krishna with your friends, with your brothers, with your children, and other family members. But you do what you've heard. Satam Madhunikanancha means what you've heard from a saintly person. In the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, Krishna is described as Bahu Murtyeka Murtika. He's one, Advaya Tattva. But Mahu Murtyeka, he becomes many, like in the Ras Leela. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on that verse, he says, Chinmayi Namnanati Pyaikyam Abhiprita. That just as Krishna is one, but he becomes many, so in the same way, Krishna's Advaya Tattva, he's one. Krishna Nam is one. And you hear the name even one time from Gurudev. Gopakumar in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, you heard the mantra one time from his Gurudev. And then his Gurudev left. And Gopakumar just repeated what he heard from his Gurudev. So Chenmai Nan Abhipretam, Nanapibipetam, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, when you've heard that one time, but you repeat what you've heard from Gurudev, that's Bahu Murtyeka Murtikam. Krishna is one, but he becomes many. So Krishna appears in the form of that Krishna Katha when we repeat that. And therefore, my Guru Maharaj said the function of Guru is to speak Shabda Brahma. He speaks transcendental sound. The function of the Sishya is to hear. And then after hearing, the Guru tells the disciple, now you speak. But what is the kirtan, or the speaking of the disciple? It's another name for Shravan, for hearing. Because the disciple should just repeat what he's heard from Gurudev. And Prabhupada said that so many, many times. Just repeat what you've heard. But we should repeat it with some feeling. And we may not understand that subject matter, but if we render service to Guru, and thereby by that rendering of service, we develop some attachment to Guru. Then, when some problem comes, or then when we feel separation from him, then the katha that you do, the prayers that you do, the kirtan that you do, it's not the same, it's not something mechanical. It's deep from the heart. And therefore, Nandakishore Goswami describes the words of Uddhava to the gopis. Toma sabara Krishna deviraha nahi jabe, Brajapuri Krishna tabe napaitaite tabe. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Uddhava told the gopis, Toma Shabara Krishneti Viraha Nahi Jabe, that while you didn't have feelings of separation, Krishna couldn't give the message. Brajapuri Krishna tabi na paite tabi. He couldn't send me here until you began to cry. And just like the story is there in Draupadi. The Dusashan came to take off her cloth, and it was a big problem. And she's a tough lady. She had her moves, she knew her martial arts and whatever. And she's holding on to the cloth. But who is she compared to Dusashan? Dusashan is so powerful as a Maharati, he can fight one person against 1,000 warriors at a time. And Draupadi, she was pulling and she was seeing it's not working. So she started calling out to Krishna. And she raised one hand. Hey Krishna, hey Govinda, please help. But Dusashan's taking off the cloth and Krishna's not coming. And then finally Draupadi says, okay, forget it. I'm not going to depend on my strength. And she let go. And she put both hands up in the air. And then Krishna came very, very quickly. So this is the qualification of the listener. And this is the dynamic which took place in this 47th chapter of the 10th canto. This is so important. This is why Uddhava is the best of the speakers, because he has a message from Krishna. He's been sent with this message, and he understands that even the listeners are more elevated than me, the gopis are much more elevated, I'm just going to repeat this again and again and again. Right? I don't understand Krishna's message properly. But as an ideal speaker, I'm just going to repeat it again and again and again. And the gopis, each time I repeat it, they're going to understand something more of that message. And the gopis are the ideal listeners. They're the ideal example of the listeners. They're crying and crying for Krishna. And because of their crying, Krishna appears before them in the form of this message. And we'll hear in our next session how Uddhava goes on to speak the principles of yoga from Krishna. It's a very mysterious subject. Why, as we mentioned previously, I think in our last session, that in ISKCON, if you start teaching yoga, many devotees will criticize you. What to speak of if you decide that we're not going to have Bhagavatam class in the temple, we're going to do Surya Namaskar instead. Devotees all over the world are going to criticize you. They're going to, yoga's Maya, Prabhu. You shouldn't do that. If we think like that, what to speak of the Braj Gopis? So Uddhava is going to come and say, yeah, there's this yoga class you should all go to. And he practices yoga, and Krishna's going to... What is that? What is the meaning? Very deep meaning. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives a very long purport explaining about the meaning of Krishna's words and why Krishna's telling him to practice yoga. So we're going to go on to that in our next session, which will be on the 30th of November, next Tuesday. Same, or Wednesday night, depending if you're in America someplace. So I want to stop there, and I want to invite the devotees, if anybody has any reflections, comments, questions, protests, anything. Sahadev Prabhu, do you have anything you want to add?
I want to ask a question. Where are we getting that quote from? where the speaker who has material desires and distinguishing between the speaker who doesn't have material desires?
That's from Bhakti Sandarbha. It's actually from Bhagavata Purana, but it's quoted in Bhakti Sandarbha, Anucheta 203. Jiva Goswami. It's a heavy statement, isn't it? And we can see. And we can see it's not just a matter of someone who doesn't understand intellectually something, but they don't understand it by the heart. Maybe Jayananda Prabhu intellectually couldn't capture everything, I don't know. But he could capture the heart of Srila Prabhupada. And so we see sometimes, I've seen over the years, that sometimes devotees try to use the Bhagavatam class to control people, to control devotees, or to smash people, or this or that. And it creates a disturbance. Therefore, the Brahmas Bhagavata Purana says, Yaloka Nasaya. Loka Nasaya just disturbs everything. It disturbs the movement. When devotees do, they give a class because they want to collect disciples, or they want to be famous, or they want to get money, or something. And that's not the purpose. Just be simple. The purpose of our kirtan, the purpose of our Krishna Katha is just to please Krishna. Is that okay? You've seen that before. You've been to that movie before. You've seen that movie before, with the people speaking like that, trying to use the Bhagavatam class for something else. I'm saying, I'm just making fun of it, calling it a movie. Yeah.
But you were saying how when we hear from someone who doesn't have pure, someone who doesn't have material desires, then that will affect the heart. Whereas the speaker who has material desires, then it can't affect the heart.
Yeah.
So what is the benefit?
Hridna samsprasya, that it doesn't touch the heart deeply. But if we hear as a service, and this is why we still have Bhagavatam class today after so many scandals, and ISKCON after so many leaders falling down and doing bad things. Otherwise, we just would have canceled it. Bhagavatam class is hereby canceled because there's been too many rascal speakers, right? It's gone on. We could have just canceled it. But it's still going on. Why? Because this is service to Srila Prabhupada. Because Prabhupada wanted us to do this thing. And if we do it with that attitude of service, then like the Hamsa, like the swan, if they just quote one verse, if they just read Prabhupada's verse and purport, then it's worth going. I get some benefit. And they're doing it out of some sense of service to Prabhupada, maybe mixed, but some sense, and that's why they're doing it together. So we're doing this together collectively as a service to Prabhupada. We're coming and hearing the verse and purport. And hopefully they have something good to say. Usually I find there's usually something. Probably the most often asked question in my Guru Maharaj, I saw over the years as his personal servant and being with him, devotees, they loved his classes. He would speak amazing things. And devotees would come to him sometimes and say, Guru Maharaj, sometimes the Bhagavatam class in the temple, it's a little painful. As we were mentioning, I think in our last session, once I heard a Bhagavatam class given by a senior sannyasi in Vrindavan, in our temple there, during the month of Kartik. And it made me so depressed. Because the most Krishna conscious thing in his class was, he said, that Krishna is blue, and so is Spider-Man and Superman. So Krishna's like Spider-Man or Superman. Oh, it really caused some pain in the heart. But still, I like going because there's a sangha of devotees trying to please Prabhupada by the class and reading Prabhupada's verse and purport. And yes, I got to give class a few days later. And I got to try to adjust, an opportunity to try to adjust things that I felt. So it's not the end of the world. And that senior devotee, who's no longer with us anymore, is an old friend of mine I love very much and have great respect for, although his classes didn't always give me so much inspiration. But he's sincere in his way, trying to serve Prabhupada. It's a painful thing, isn't it, Prabhu? I mean, we've seen so many devotees over the years not want to go to class because of these things. Once we went to one temple in Europe. It was the first time we'd ever gone there. We were traveling and giving classes. They'd invited us to come. And when we arrived there, they were very sweet. They greeted us with a big kirtan. And big means about 10, 15 devotees. We went inside the temple, and the temple was like huge. You could fit probably 300 or 400 devotees in that temple, a huge place. And there was only about 10 or 15 devotees there. And the temple president, the first time we'd been there, the temple president was apologizing to me and saying, "Boo, I'm sorry, there used to be hundreds of devotees here, but they don't come anymore." And this is the first time I'd been there, the first time I'd met the temple president. I was a little bold. And I said, Krishna Katha is all attractive. Who's not attracted by Krishna Katha? So here's my question to all of you, I told them. If previously everyone was coming, why aren't they coming now? And they were a little confused. I think they're not used to the speaker asking questions like that, and they were kind of quiet for a while. And I pushed them, and why aren't they coming? And the temple president said, "Well, Prabhu, they're in Maya." And I said, "I'm also in Maya." Maybe a lot of us are also in Maya too, but we're coming. Why are we coming and they're not coming? And someone else said, "Well, they have to work jobs." And I said, "But some of you are also working jobs. And why are they not coming?" And they couldn't give an answer. And I said, "I think that they're not coming because someone used Krishna Katha in the wrong way. Because you weren't actually doing Krishna Katha. You wanted to try to use it to control the devotees. You wanted to try to use it to collect disciples or to collect money or something. And people felt hurt by that. And they stopped coming. But if you do it in a simple way, you just repeat what you've heard. Bahu murtika murtikam chinmayinam nanitipyaikam abhipretam. Vishnu says, you just repeat what you've heard. Then the one becomes many. And Prabhupada becomes manifest. Krishna becomes manifest. If we do it in a simple way.
In a service mood.
Yeah.
Then
And we don't have to be so hyped. Sometimes devotees think we have to learn Sanskrit, we have to go to a sadhu who knows so much Shastra. And it's nice. We would like to hear from someone who knows. Especially we'd like to hear from a great devotee. But I always keep the example of Jayananda Prabhu in front of me. He didn't have a Bhakti Shastri degree. But I would be so happy to hear classes from him. Even though I might already know all the information that he says. But the feeling that he has, the mood that he has, and that's what we want to collect. And that's what we should promote in our society.
Yeah, there are so many examples of that, where a disciple may be illiterate or whatever, but because of his service and surrender to Krishna, within his heart will give that knowledge.
Yeah, so let me repeat it, because they can't hear you. So let me repeat it for devotees online. Sadhu Prabhu is saying there's so many examples of that, of sadhus who are speaking, maybe they don't even understand. An example is given in Chaitanya Charitamrita, of the Gita speaker, and maybe he's holding the book upside down. Actually, it says that he was reading, he could read, but he couldn't pronounce properly. And what could he understand? But he's crying and crying. And Mahaprabhu said, why are you crying? You can't understand. He said, I just see the picture. I think of Krishna being Arjun's chariot driver, and I'm crying. And Mahaprabhu said, yes, you're the proper speaker of the Gita.
Shankaracharya, his servant, personal servant, was illiterate.
Uh-huh.
And so his disciples were complaining about him. And so then Shankaracharya asked him to give class, and he just blew all the disciples away.
Yeah, Sadhu Prabhu is telling a story. I think it's Padmapad is the name of that disciple. Padmapad. And it's an interesting story how he got that name. That this one disciple, Shankar, he didn't know very much Shastra. He's kind of a murka, kind of a foolish person. But he's sincere. And one day some of the disciples were criticizing him before Shankar. And Shankaracharya, to defeat them, he called out for the disciple, hey, come. The disciple is on the other side of a river. But when Gurudev called, without any hesitation, I have to go. And he ran across the river. And wherever he put his feet, lotuses appeared, and they supported him. And so he got the name Padmapad. And then Shankaracharya said, no, you speak Bhagavatam. And he spoke an amazing way. So, Mukam Kodi Vachalam Pangum Langayate, by the mercy of Gurudev, even a murka, even someone who doesn't know, they can speak. It's a nice example. You had something to do, Andrew? Can you speak really loud? Otherwise I have to repeat.
Could you just repeat?
I'll have to repeat. Could I?
Could you repeat about Dhenukasura? Because I didn't quite...
Dhenukasura, she's asking if I could repeat about Dhenuka. Dhenukasura, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that Dhenuka represents someone who's attached to external things. And such a donkey-like person becomes upset when they see devotees who are getting the fruit. In other words, they're wanting to hear about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Or in other words, they're getting Krishna prema. And the donkey-like person thinks that, actually Bhaktivinoda says, ass-like devotees think that following the regulated principles is everything. They're like asses. They're thinking that the regulated principles are everything. And they can't appreciate, they become disturbed when they see that someone is climbing the tree. They can't climb the tree. They're there protecting the trees. Dhenuka is protecting, it's Kamsa's Talavan forest. Dhenuka is protecting that for the demon Kamsa. And he's thinking, I'm doing some religious thing because Kamsa is a Rajarsi, he's a Raja Rishi. He's thinking like that. And he's protecting the forest, and he's thinking this is what it's meant for. It's meant to be protected, not that we take it. We don't take it ourselves, but we're supposed to protect it for someone who's qualified, and he thinks Kamsa is qualified. But actually, all the devotees in Madhya Lila chapter 25 of Chaitanya Charitamrita, the end verses, is a beautiful song written by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, which describes about how Mahaprabhu came and he gave this garden, and the devotees have to go and eat the fruits in that garden. That's our business, to go and eat those fruits. But we do that by hearing properly from Gurudev. And if we, on the other hand, if we just try to get a ladder or something and just, without hearing properly from Gurudev, like a Burundi Bird, who looks like a big personality, he's living in the Himalayan mountains, but he hasn't rendered service to Gurudev. He's like what Prabhupada might call a sahajya. He's just trying to jump to Govinda Lilamrita and all these very high topics prematurely without being under the guidance of Gurudev. He's trying to get those fruits in an illegal kind of way. That's the person that Dhenukasura is trying to guard against. But when the cowherd boys come, they have adhikar, they have qualification to get those fruits. But Dhenuka doesn't recognize them, and he makes a big noise and becomes angry about that. Is that okay?
Yeah,
You understand it better?
this building is Talavan.
Sorry? Oh, because it's significant. She says because we're in Talavan building, that's very significant.
No, my building is Talavan. This is
Kalivan.
Oh. India Lake is claiming Taliban. This is Kamyavan. This is... Okay. So who's Dhenuka there? Oh, sure.
And you mentioned that Buddhism has securities, and one of them is doing service for spiritual master. Speaking about service, what do you mean? Reading and chanting is also service, or it should be practical some service, I don't know, cooking, washing, or doing some service for the devotees, for the temple, or whatever.
So she's asking a question that we're saying that the Shravanadikar, or qualification to hear, means we're also doing seva, we're serving. So what does that service mean? And she said, I mentioned that we may serve by hearing and chanting, it's also a service. Once Sukadev Maharaj, you may know our ISKCON Sukadev Maharaj, he came to Bhubaneswar in like 1994, 95, and he was hearing every day from our Guru Maharaj. And after being there for a week or two, for some reason he came to me. There were two devotees who had authorization to go to see Guru Maharaj at any time. One was the temple president, and the other was myself, because I was doing some Grantha Seva for Guru Maharaj. So somehow he came to me, Sukadev Maharaj, and he said, could you arrange for me to meet with your Guru Maharaj? I said, certainly. And so I was there. And Sukadev Maharaj, very simple, and he said, Maharaj, I'm very much appreciating your classes, very, very nice. He said, but there's one thing I don't understand. And this is pariprashna, by the way. This is submissive inquiry. When you have a doubt, you don't try to hide it, but you're straightforward with it. He said, I don't understand. You're giving these classes, very nice classes, And you've got all these Western devotees, maybe 100 Western devotees here, and they're not doing any service. They're just coming and hearing every day. Shouldn't they be going out and doing book distribution? And we were sometimes. We were going out. I was serving Jagannath as a pujari, and I was also doing some Grantha Seva, and sometimes we go out in Harinam. But it's true, for a lot of the Western devotees at that time, they were just hearing and taking prasadam, a lot of prasadam. Anyway, that's also a service. So Guru Maharaj replied to him, he said, Are Baba, what kind of service will they do? First, they should hear. Because amongst Navavidhi Bhakti, as described by Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, there's 9 different processes of Bhakti. They begin with hearing. We have to hear. If we don't hear from Gurudev, then what kind of service are we going to do? You may, I'm going to cook for Gurudev. I like chicken very much, and Guru Maharaj is sick, and chicken soup is very good. It'll be very good for him. But you haven't heard the most basic thing, Hare Krishna. So you'll speculate. So unless we hear, we can't understand how to serve. So that hearing is the beginning of service, and it's the foundation of service. It's the most important service. If we don't do any other service, if that's the only service that we do, and that's Maharaj Parikshit. He just listened. And by that hearing, he got everything. He got all perfection. If we just hear, but we hear as a service. Again, as we mentioned, some people like to hear it for entertainment. Oh, it's a really nice kirtan. Me, like, yeah, it's rocking, man. I like that guy, with tattoos and whatever, That's okay. People are having fun. Why not have fun with Krishna consciousness? But when we go there as a service to hear, I'm hearing because I need to purify my heart so that I can serve Gurudev in a better way. Yadi dashyasi me kaman vadam stvam vadadar shiva kamanam vidya samroham vavatastu vane vadam. Prahlad Maharaj prays in the 7th canto of the Lord Nrsimha. He says, my dear Lord, O best of the givers of benediction, if you want to give me a desirable benediction, then I pray that in the core of my heart there be no material desires. But at the same time, in the 3rd canto of the Bhagavatam, Lord Kapila Dev describes that praying to become free from material desires is saguna bhakti, or bhakti in the mode of nature. It's in the mode of goodness, but it's under the modes of nature. It's not transcendental. But Prabhupada in his purport to Prahlad's prayer, he says that Prahlad is doing that as a service. Because how can I do service? You want to cook for Gurudev. But how are you going to, cooking for Gurudev means you also have to clean the kitchen. Cooking for Gurudev means you have to collect the proper pots and utensils. You have to collect the proper vegetables and grains and things to cook. It's more than just cooking itself. So service means also that we have to purify our heart. And we were hearing that also in the conclusion of the Skanda Purana when it speaks about the proper, who is a proper listener. It said here that someone, that personality is someone who has a pure heart. Let's see, I missed it. Someone who has a pure, here it is. Maybe not. Here it is. Nityam Krishna Jana Priyo Nigati Shrotra Savai Bhakti Bihi. He's sucha, he's pure, he has some purity of heart. So that purity of heart is required to properly hear. If I hear, but then I'm not following the regulated principles, there's still some benefit. We don't ever tell someone to stop hearing. There's still some benefit, but the benefit will take a lot longer. Whereas if we practice strictly and we have a pure heart, and not that just following the regulated principles gives you a pure heart, but by not performing illicit activities, then our consciousness has some chance to become purified. Then we can hear it properly, and that hearing is a service. Is that okay? All right. Induleka, you had something? Okay. You're like the donkey, or you're like the Dhanukasur, or the Taliban?
I like everything, but it's so much. It's like a heavy person with
Okay. Anybody online have any reflections they want to share Let's see, I want to thank Krishna Priya. Krishna Priya in North Carolina, she's commented, thank you very much for bringing up so many important points about having the proper mood in hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So, anybody else? Also, we may have, that's it. Okay, if anybody else has any reflections, you can post them real quick here on Facebook. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and stop. Okay. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samveda Bhakta Binda ki jai, Gopremanandi Hari Hari Bol, Vancha Kalpadurubhischa, Kripasindhu Vyacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha, Ananda Kori Vaishnava Binda ki